thoughts, hadn't noticed James approach her. He put an arm around her shoulders and smiled into her face. "Yes, son. Just a little weary." "Come right in the wagon, at least until the afternoon heat subsides." Lydia shaded her eyes with her hand and looked up into the still sky. The sun was a brilliant ball of fire overhead. In its blazing light, the painful memory of the scene with Elizabeth began to burn away. She shook her head and smiled. "I'm fine. Would you find your brother? I'd like him to climb in the wagon and rest for a while." "Zachary is up by the Parkers' wagon with Roxana and Millie. They've been playing tag among the wagons all morning." "That child is going to be worn out long before supper. Please fetch him for me, James." He nodded and trotted up ahead, disappearing among the wagons lumbering their way along. Lydia sighed and glanced up briefly again at the sky. The expanse of blue was broken only by a few high, wispy clouds. The sun beat down relentlessly on her shoulders, and the trail ahead shimmered in the summer heat. Lydia wiped her brow with her sleeve. Her neck and face were gritty with dirt, and dust clung to her body like a pair of close-fitting long johns. It invaded her nostrils, coated her lips, and stung her eyes. Sometimes the trail was so dusty that she couldn't see the next wagon. But soon they would be out of the dust and the heat. The mountain country ahead would be a welcome relief from the unvarying scenery of the plains. She was so tired of the lifeless sagebrush and greasewood, the irksome mosquitoes, the deadly rattlesnakes, and the ever-present dust. She tucked a straying strand of auburn hair under the brim of her sunbonnet, then squinted ahead at the long line of wagons stretched out over the prairie. They looked to her like a great undulating snake. Their canvas tops, clean and white when they left Illinois, were now smudged with dirt and streaked with dusty rain. The blue paint on their own wagon was blistered and peeled, and its shiny red wheels were caked with mud. It had been more than 2 years since they left their beautiful city of Nauvoo in February of 1846. Those first few weeks on the trail seemed almost a blur in Lydia's mind. They had made their first camp at Sugar Creek in Iowa Territory, then moved on to Garden Grove, Mount Pisgah, and Canesville. The last months of that year were spent at winter quarters, where Roxana had fallen ill with the black canker and nearly lost her life. She was confined to bed for weeks, and her illness prevented the family from continuing their journey west until the summer of 1848. They traveled with a company of over 600 persons and 226 wagons under the leadership of Heber C. Kimball. The camp followed the broad, sandy banks of the Platte for 200 miles, a muddy, yellow river which the saints described as too thick to drink and too thin to plow. They kept to the north bank to avoid the heavier traffic of the Oregon Trail on the south side. The Oregon Trail had been traveled since the 1830s by trappers, traders, and immigrants making their way west to the Willamette Valley of Oregon or the lush country of California. Occasionally, they spotted Indians. Once, a group of Pawnee came into the camp to barter for food and blankets. The children had been terrified at first by their fierce appearance. Dressed in animal skins with painted faces and shaved heads, except for a single scalp lock. They were quite unlike any Indians either she or Christian had ever seen. They left Pawnee country near Loup Fork. From this point, great buffalo herds became a common sight. Thousands and thousands of the beasts roamed over the prairie. Sometimes a herd was so large that it darkened the ground for miles. The men hunted enough buffalo to satisfy the needs of the camp, but to kill them for sport was strictly prohibited. Lydia enjoyed the fresh buffalo meat, and she and the other women dried the remainder for future use. The camp also ate fish from the streams and wild herbs that grew along the road. Zachary suddenly came bounding into view. He dashed to Lydia's side and grabbed her hand. "Guess what, Mama?" he cried excitedly. "What?" Lydia returned with as much enthusiasm as